On Christmas morning in 1996, Boulder, Colorado woke up to what should have been a day of joy, family, and celebration. But inside the home of John and Patsy Ramsey, a tragedy was unfolding that would forever etch itself into America's darkest chapters of true crime. 6-year-old JonBenét Patricia Ramsey, a beauty pageant queen with a dazzling smile and a promising future, was found murdered in her own basement. Almost 3 decades later, her case remains unsolved, haunting investigators, dividing the public, and raising more questions than answers. JonBenét was no ordinary child in the eyes of the public. Blonde, blue-eyed, and often seen in pageant costumes adorned with sequins and tiaras, she embodied both innocence and controversy. To many, she was a beloved daughter, a vibrant little girl. To others, her image on television sparked uncomfortable debates about child beauty pageants and exploitation. But in that December of 1996, all of that faded away. JonBenét's name became synonymous with mystery, suspicion, and a search for justice that still hasn't found its conclusion. It all began on the morning of December 26th. Patsy Ramsey, JonBenét's mother, allegedly found a ransom note on the staircase inside the family's sprawling Boulder home. The note claimed that JonBenét had been kidnapped by a mysterious group demanding $118,000 in exchange for her safe return. It was a bizarrely specific amount, almost identical to John Ramsey's Christmas bonus from his company. The letter was unusually long, spanning over 2.5 pages, and written in a way that sounded theatrical, as if ripped straight from a crime movie script. It ended with a chilling demand: do not contact the police or the child would be killed. Yet almost immediately, things began to unravel. Despite the warning in the ransom note, Patsy Ramsey called 911. Friends and family were summoned to the house, contaminating what would later be considered one of the most mishandled crime scenes in modern American history. Police officers arrived but failed to properly secure the house. Hours passed, and no kidnapper made contact. Then came the most horrifying discovery of all. Later that same day, John Ramsey, the father, went down into the basement, into a small room often referred to as the wine cellar. There he found the body of his daughter. JonBenét was lying on the floor, covered with a white blanket. A garrote made of cord and a broken paintbrush handle was wrapped tightly around her neck. Her wrists had been tied, and duct tape covered her mouth. The Ramsey family's worst nightmare had become a grim reality. JonBenét had not been kidnapped. She had been brutally murdered inside her own home. The investigation that followed was nothing short of chaos. From the beginning, suspicion fell not on an outside intruder, but on the Ramsey family themselves. The handwriting in the ransom note was inconclusive, but experts pointed out that it bore similarities to Patsy Ramsey's writing style. The strange amount demanded matched John Ramsey's bonus, raising even more eyebrows. And the very fact that JonBenét's body was found inside the home suggested that the crime had to have been committed by someone with access, someone already inside that house. Yet there were problems. The crime scene had been compromised. Friends, neighbors, and even clergy members had walked freely through the Ramsey home that morning. Potential evidence had been moved, touched, or destroyed. Fingerprints were smudged. Footprints were overlooked, and critical hours were wasted. The autopsy later revealed more disturbing details. JonBenét had suffered a skull fracture, possibly from a blunt object, before being strangled. There were also indications of possible sexual assault, though the findings were inconclusive and heavily debated. Some forensic evidence pointed toward the presence of an unknown male through DNA traces found on her clothing, but it was never enough to conclusively identify a suspect. For years, public opinion was divided. Was it the parents? Was it her older brother Burke, who was only 9 years old at the time? Or was it truly an unknown intruder who broke into the Ramsey house that night? The intruder theory gained traction because of an unlocked basement window, which could have provided access to the house. Supporters of this theory pointed to the DNA evidence that did not match any of the Ramseys. But critics argued that the window was too small, that there were no clear signs of forced entry, and that the family's behavior seemed suspicious. The Ramseys themselves lived under a shadow of accusation for years. In 1999, a grand jury voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey on charges of child abuse resulting in death, but the district attorney refused to sign the indictment, claiming there wasn't enough evidence to convict them. By then, the case had already been tried in the court of public opinion. Many believed the parents were guilty. Others believed they were innocent victims of a horribly botched investigation. Patsy Ramsey would go to her grave in 2006, still denying any involvement in her daughter's death. She died of ovarian cancer, leaving John Ramsey and Burke to carry the weight of the accusations. Burke himself lived in near-total obscurity for years, until finally breaking his silence in a television interview decades later. But even then, his words did little to silence the speculation. Over the years, countless theories have emerged. Some believe JonBenét was accidentally killed by her brother Burke during a late-night argument over food, and that the parents staged the crime scene to cover it up. Others are convinced the parents themselves, particularly Patsy, lost control in a fit of rage, and then orchestrated the elaborate ransom note to mislead investigators. Still others cling to the belief that an unknown intruder slipped into the house, committed the crime, and vanished into the night. The media circus surrounding the case only intensified its complexity. Tabloids splashed JonBenét's face across their covers for years. True crime enthusiasts dissected every detail of the ransom note, every interview the Ramseys gave, every conflicting piece of evidence. TV specials, documentaries, books, and even conspiracy theories turned this tragedy into one of the most infamous unsolved murders in modern history. And yet, for all the speculation, for all the theories, no one has ever been charged. No one has ever stood trial for JonBenét Ramsey's murder. Today, nearly 3 decades later, the case remains officially open. The Boulder Police Department claims to continue its investigation, but with every passing year, the chances of finding definitive answers grow slimmer. Modern DNA technology has been applied, but the samples are so degraded and limited that breakthroughs remain elusive. JonBenét would have been a grown woman today. She might have had a career, a family of her own, a life far beyond the shadow of pageants and tragedy. Instead, she is frozen in time, forever 6 years old, forever the little girl whose story gripped the world and never let go. The case of JonBenét Ramsey is not just a crime. It is a mirror held up to society. It reflects our obsession with beauty, our distrust of appearances, our hunger for answers even when the truth remains out of reach. It is a story of a child lost, of justice denied, and of questions that may never be answered. So we are left with a haunting question that echoes through the decades. Who killed JonBenét Ramsey? Was it someone within her own family? A faceless intruder who slipped in under the cover of night? Or is the truth something stranger, darker, something that even now, nearly 30 years later, lies buried deep within the silence of that Boulder home? One thing is certain. Until the day comes when the truth is uncovered, JonBenét's name will remain etched in history as the face of America's most haunting cold case. A case that refuses to die.